Hello everybody, this is Dr. Cole, Sunday evening, March 7th, moving into week 10 of Comparative Governments Political Science 3143 for the spring 2021 term. Everyone, we're coming up on spring break. The next time I talk to you will be 2 weeks from tonight, because after this week we take spring break. So I'll be talking to you again 2 weeks from tonight. Later this week, on Thursday the 11th, we have quiz number 5, and we'll chat about that Wednesday evening at 7. Everyone, please be sure you can access all 4 of the articles that have been assigned, and if you cannot access them, contact me. Now, the message you received had 2 links. Then you received a separate message forwarding you a link to an article from the Wall Street Journal. And then there was yet another message that had the entire text of an article from the London Economist. Okay, so be sure you have received all that and that you can access the articles. Okay, please don't wait until the night before the quiz. Be sure now or early this week that you can access all that material and begin taking a look at it. You have an article about candidates for president in France. With the election coming up next year in 2022. You have an article about legislation before the French National Assembly in response to terrorist attacks in France that are related to Islamist radicalism, okay, with about 10% of the population of the country being of the Muslim faith, due largely to France's long-standing ties with Algeria in North Africa. And President Macron has made what many people take as a move to the right in the direction of being very strict and proactive in counteracting what you might call Islamist radicalism in France, which is a fraught issue because of a series of attacks that have taken place over the past decade or so in France. Then with regard to Japan, you have a book review from the Wall Street Journal. So be sure you distinguish between the reviewer and the author of the book, discussing conditions in Japan in the first decade or two of the 21st century. Then your article from the London Economist discusses Prime Minister Suga and how he has been doing, whether he's been doing well or not, and draw your own conclusions about that. Now, Japan is on the syllabus for this week. Okay, we'll take the quiz later in the week, which will deal with both Japan and France. Let's say a few things about Japan. Japan is a country that had a democratic constitution imposed on it, more or less, by the occupying American forces after the war. World War II, of course. And you might say they took to this new constitution fairly well. The emperor withdrew the claim that he was somehow divine, and democratic institutions were accepted. In fact, one thing the Japanese have taken to is the pacifist provisions that were included in that post-war constitution. In fact, Prime Minister Abe, predecessor to the current Prime Minister, wanted to revoke or amend that pacifist provision of the Japanese constitution, but could not do so because public support for it was so strong. Japan is an example of a predominant party system, where many parties compete, but it turns out that by and large, one party is predominant, and that's the Liberal Democratic Party. The LDP had its predominance broken on a couple of occasions, very briefly, going back a couple of decades, but it regained its predominance. And one thing you find with a large predominant party is you find the development of factions within that party, very often in Japan along the lines of the personalities of individual politicians, but it's the Liberal Democratic Party that is predominant in Japan. Now, Japan is a country that is facing many challenges and problems. In the 1980s, Americans tended to regard Japan the way we do China now. We regarded it with some concern and alarm, even though Japan, unlike China, is and was an ally during the post-World War II period. Japanese investors were buying up assets in the United States. I was concerned going back a couple of decades the inroads made by the Japanese automobile industry into United States market share, which is something that has not ceased. Now, what happened later in the 1980s is there was a real estate bubble in Japan that burst, and the country fell into recession, and it has never really recovered from that recession. It has never enjoyed the economic dynamism or rapid growth that it enjoyed in the post-World War II years up to that point. Japan faces the problem that it is an aging society, and it has never been open to immigration from outside the way the United States has. It has been speculated that Japan is in the process of shrinking its population from 125 million to 100 million in the coming decades. That poses a problem and a challenge to Japan as it would for any country. On top of that, there is the disaster that took place a decade ago. In fact, the anniversary is being observed this month. The earthquake in tsunami that caused a meltdown at the Fukushima nuclear power plant. Up to that point, Japan had been fairly enthusiastic about nuclear power as a power supply, and subsequently, understandably, support has been lost for that technology as a source of electric power. So Japan is a place that had a remarkable record after World War II for many decades, but since the 1980s has undergone many challenges and problems. But is a good example of a country that adopted democratic institutions rather suddenly, but arguably adopted pretty well to them. All right, so we have 4 things to look at for the quiz on Thursday that we will discuss in the chat room Wednesday night. Okay, 2 pieces to read about France and 2 about Japan. Please be sure that you can access all 4 of those in advance of the quiz. Right? Now, once we take that quiz, I will get an assignment out for quiz number 6, which we deal with Mexico and Nigeria, that we will take after spring break. Now, the class notes from Mexico were up on the website already. I hope to get the notes for Nigeria up over spring break. The other thing about, to make note of everyone, you will have received a message about the country report. Now remember, you don't absolutely have to do a country report, but the way we've written the syllabus, you must do a country report to be eligible for an A in the course. Now I've discussed a couple of dozen countries in that message you should have received, which was entitled simply Country Reports. Remember, this is due at the end of the term. I hope that you will contact me once you have settled on a country that you wish to research for this project. Be wise not to wait any more than a month from the due date, that is early next month. Okay, so please contact me once you settle upon a country for your country report. And I will try to give you some feedback and constructive criticism about how you ought to go back about researching a paper on that particular country. So remember, that will be due at the end of the term, and you must submit one. You must submit a country report to be eligible for an A in the course. Right, but that's some weeks down the road. We're looking at quiz 5 this week on France and Japan, and we will take that Thursday after we chat in the chat room for 45 minutes about it, Wednesday evening at 7 o'clock. Right. Then we will be on spring break. We will come back after spring break and take a quiz on Mexico and Nigeria. That will probably take place not the week after we come back from spring break, but the week after that, in late March. And then we'll have 2 quizzes to take in April. That will be our quota of 8 quizzes for the term. So, quiz number 5 this week on Thursday. We'll discuss that in the chat room Wednesday at 7. And then we'll be on spring break for a little while that I know everyone is looking forward to. So we will speak to you again 2 weeks from tonight. This week we will chat in the chat room Wednesday at 7 and take quiz number 5 on France and Japan, available to you all day Thursday. So be looking at that material, especially on Japan, which is on the syllabus for this week. Then we will chat Wednesday, take the quiz Thursday, and then we'll have one more day of class before we break for our spring break. We'll be talking to you again 2 weeks from tonight. So we hope to see some of you at least in the chat room Wednesday, and we'll have quiz number 5 available for you all day Thursday. So be looking at that material, study hard and take it easy, and we'll talk to you again 2 weeks from tonight.